The Universal Council's decision to host a galactic creature showcase seemed at the time like a perfectly reasonable idea for promoting interspecies cooperation and understanding. Looking back now, I realize we should have been more specific about the definition of the word safe. My name is Kelvor Thrain, and I'm a documentation specialist for the Xanthari Confederation. We're a peaceful species, standing roughly 4 feet tall with crystalline skin that shifts colors based on our emotional state. Right now, remembering that day, I'm probably cycling through about 15 different shades of regret mixed with residual terror. The invitation had gone out to all 73 member species of the Galactic Assembly. Simple instructions, really. Bring one creature from your homeworld to showcase the biodiversity of your planet. Educational purposes, cultural exchange, that sort of thing. The creatures needed to be contained, documented, and here's the important part we thought was obvious: non-lethal to other sentient beings. The venue was spectacular. The Harmony Station's main exhibition hall, a massive dome structure with climate-controlled environments for different species comfort zones. We'd set up individual display areas, each roughly 20 meters square, with appropriate barriers and environmental controls, medical teams standing by, security protocols in place, insurance forms filed in triplicate. I'd been excited, honestly. My job was to catalog each species' contribution, take notes on their unique evolutionary adaptations, and compile everything into an official record. Easy assignment. Educational, boring in the best possible way. The first arrivals set exactly the tone we'd hoped for. The Maluvian ambassador brought something they called a fluff hopper, which was essentially a ball of purple fur with 6 tiny legs and eyes that looked like they'd been drawn on by a child with a marker. It made a sound somewhere between a hiccup and a sneeze. Adorable, completely harmless. It mostly just bounced around its enclosure eating synthetic vegetation pellets. The Kraven Collective presented their contribution next, a bioluminescent swimmer from their methane seas. Beautiful creature, really. It floated in its specially designed tank, pulsing with soft blue and green lights, occasionally releasing small bubbles that shimmered in patterns the Kraven explained were a form of communication. Peaceful, elegant, exactly what we were going for. Then came the Thoraxians with their singing stones. Yes, rocks. Living rocks that hummed in harmonic frequencies. The Thoraxians are silicon-based themselves, so I suppose it made sense to them. But watching a delegation of insectoid beings proudly present 3 boulders that occasionally vibrated was, well, it was certainly something. Harmless, though. You really can't get much safer than a rock. The Yithrin brought a small aerial creature with translucent wings and a body that seemed to be made of solidified mist. It drifted through its enclosure like a living piece of art, occasionally dispersing into a cloud before reforming itself. The Yithrin ambassador explained it fed on ambient electromagnetic radiation. No teeth, no claws, no digestive system in any traditional sense. Perfect. Even the notoriously intense Drakthar species warrior culture and all brought something surprisingly gentle, a 6-legged herbivore from their homeworld's northern forests, with thick armor plating and a disposition so docile it had fallen asleep during its own presentation. The Drakthar looked almost embarrassed by how peaceful their contribution was. Everything was going wonderfully. My notes were filling up with descriptions of gentle creatures, interesting adaptations, and absolutely zero incidents requiring medical intervention. My crystalline skin had settled into a pleasant amber color, the Xanthari equivalent of contentment. That's when the humans arrived. Now, we'd all heard stories about humans. They'd only joined the Galactic Assembly about 8 standard cycles ago, and their reputation was, shall we say, complicated. Something about their planet being a death world, whatever that meant. Stories about their absurd durability, their bizarre risk-taking behavior, their tendency to treat dangerous situations as recreational activities. But stories are just stories, right? The human delegation consisted of 3 individuals. The leader introduced himself as Jackson Thorne, representing Earth's Biodiversity Institute, tall by human standards, with dark skin and an expression that I would later recognize as someone trying very hard not to smile. The other 2 humans were apparently handlers, both wearing thick protective gear that seemed at the time like overkill. Behind them they were pushing a massive container on a hovering platform. The container was metal, reinforced, and had more warning labels than I'd ever seen on a single object. Biohazard symbols, danger warnings, something in human script that I later learned translated to "do not tap on glass." "Excuse me," I said, my skin flickering to a concerned yellow-green. "What exactly do you have in there?" Jackson Thorne's smile widened. "Oh, don't worry. It's just a little representative from Earth's aquatic ecosystems. Nothing too extreme. The way he emphasized too extreme made my skin flash straight to alarm orange. It is contained, yes? Asked Valorna, the Kraven security chief, her tentacles curling defensively. Absolutely, Jackson assured her, patting the container with what I felt was dangerous casualness. Triple reinforced containment. Fed 2 hours ago, so he should be pretty calm. Probably. That word should have been our first warning. Jackson Thorne wheeled the container into the designated human display area, and I noticed several things simultaneously. First, the container was filled with water, murky and dark. Second, there was something large moving inside it, something that made the water ripple and slosh with disturbing weight. Third, every single human in the delegation had taken 3 steps back from the container, which seemed like a really bad sign. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives of all configurations, Jackson announced with the confidence of someone who absolutely knew what kind of chaos he was about to unleash. May I present Earth's saltwater crocodile, Crocodilus porosus, apex predator, one of the most successful evolutionary designs in our planet's history. This particular specimen is a juvenile male, approximately 4.2 meters long, weighing in at around 450 kilograms. He pressed a control and the front panel of the container slowly transformed from opaque metal to transparent viewing glass. I want you to understand something. In my 7 decades of life, I had never experienced true instinctual terror. The Zenthuri evolved on a world with virtually no predators. We simply don't have the genetic memory of being prey. Our fear responses are learned, intellectual, based on rational assessment of danger. But when that glass cleared and I saw what was inside, something ancient and primal in whatever corner of my brain still remembered the early days of evolution on any world screamed at me to run. The crocodile was perfectly still in the water, suspended like a submarine waiting to strike. Its body was covered in thick, armored scales that looked less like skin, and more like interlocking plates of organic battle armor, dark greenish-brown on top, pale underneath. Built like a biological tank designed by something that really understood the concept of overkill. But it was the head that truly horrified me. Long, powerful, shaped like a battering ram covered in teeth. And those teeth, oh those teeth, when the creature's mouth was closed, they were still visible, protruding at irregular intervals like some kind of nightmare fence. They weren't the neat uniform teeth of other predators I'd seen in xenobiology texts. They were chaotic, overlapping, designed by evolution's cruelest imagination. And the eyes. The eyes were the worst part. They sat on top of its skull, positioned so it could see above water while the rest of its body remained submerged and hidden. Right now those eyes were fixed on us with an intelligence that was deeply unsettling. Not sentient intelligence, no. Something colder, calculating, patient. The look of something that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of killing and saw absolutely no reason to change the formula. My skin cycled through colors so fast I probably looked like a malfunctioning light display. I wasn't alone. The Maluvian ambassador had gone completely pale, their fur standing on end. The Thoraxian delegation was clicking their mandibles in alarm patterns. Even the Drakthar warrior, the one whose species prided themselves on fearlessness, had taken several steps backward. That, Valorna said slowly, her tentacles coiled so tight they looked painful, is your contribution. That is what you consider appropriate for a peaceful cultural exchange. Jackson shrugged, and I swear there was amusement in his eyes. You said to bring a creature from our world. This is a creature from our world. Pretty common one, actually. We have about 200,000 of these guys in the wild, maybe more. They live in rivers, swamps, coastal areas. You know, regular habitats. Regular? I found my voice somewhere between horror and disbelief. There are 200,000 of these monsters on your planet? Oh, way more if you count all the crocodilian species, Jackson said cheerfully, as if he was discussing something as mundane as different varieties of plants. We've got American alligators, Nile crocodiles, caimans, gharials. This fellow's species is just the biggest, and the most aggressive. They hold the record for strongest bite force of any living animal on Earth. About 16,000 newtons of pressure. Can snap bones like twigs, tear through metal, crush a skull with one bite. The creature, as if on cue, shifted slightly in the water, and I could see the muscles rippling beneath that armored hide. The tail, thick as a tree trunk, moved with lazy power that suggested it could accelerate from stillness to attack speed in a fraction of a second. How? The Ythrin ambassador managed, their misty form flickering with agitation. Does anything else survive on your planet? Oh, you'd be surprised, Jackson said. Crocs are actually pretty chill most of the time. They just, sit around, regulate their temperature, wait for prey. Energy-efficient hunters, they can go months without eating if they need to. And when they do eat? Valorna asked, though I wasn't sure she actually wanted to know the answer. Jackson's smile took on a slightly darker quality. Well, they've got one of the most powerful bites in the animal kingdom. As I mentioned, they grab their prey, drag it underwater, and then they do this fun thing called a death roll. They spin their entire body while holding on with those jaws, ripping off chunks of meat. It's really quite effective. Brutal, sure, but effective. My documentation pad slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. Nobody moved to pick it up. We were all too busy staring at the monster in the tank, reevaluating everything we thought we knew about humanity. The Drakthar warrior, species famous across the galaxy for their combat prowess, spoke up in a voice that was surprisingly quiet. You live on the same planet as these things? Willingly. I mean, we don't really have a choice, Jackson said. Earth's our home. But yeah, people live near crocodiles all the time. Go swimming in their habitats even. We've got warning signs and stuff. Warning signs, I repeated weakly. You have warning signs, sure. Beware of crocodiles, that kind of thing. Common sense, really. The creature's eyes rotated slightly, tracking movement outside its container, and I realized with creeping horror that it was watching us, studying us, learning our patterns, waiting. For approximately 10 minutes everything remained tense but controlled. The crocodile stayed in its container. We stayed outside the container. The natural order of predator and prey, separated by reinforced transparent aluminum, seemed to be holding. Then the Thoraxian junior science officer made the single worst decision of his entire career. I want to get a closer bioelectric reading, he announced, pulling out a handheld scanner. The electromagnetic signature from such a primitive predator might provide interesting data for our archives. I wouldn't recommend that, Jackson started to say, but the Thoraxian was already approaching the container. Scanner extended. The crocodile, which had been motionless for so long I'd almost convinced myself it was asleep, exploded into motion. I need you to understand the speed. This creature weighed 450 kilograms. It was 4 meters of armored muscle and teeth. Physics suggested something that large should move slowly, ponderously. Physics was clearly taking the day off. The crocodile launched itself at the glass with such violence that the entire container rocked on its platform. The sound was like a ship collision, a deep, resonating boom that I felt in my crystalline structure. Water sloshed over the top of the container. The glass, that beautiful reinforced, supposedly indestructible glass, developed a small crack. The Thoraxian screamed, a sound I didn't know his species could make, and fell backward so hard his scanner shattered on the floor. My skin flashed pure white, the Zenthari color for absolute terror. Every species in the exhibition hall was suddenly scrambling backward, instinct overriding rational thought. Okay, everybody stay calm, Jackson said, which is what humans apparently say right before everything gets significantly worse. The glass is fine. It's rated for this. Probably, Valorna shrieked. You said probably again. The crocodile hit the glass a second time. The crack spread. Not much, just a little. But in that moment a little was entirely too much. Right, so small issue. One of the human handlers, a woman named Chen, spoke up. The containment unit might be slightly less reinforced than our paperwork indicated. Budgetary concerns. You understand? I absolutely do not understand, I managed, my voice coming out several octaves higher than normal. The crocodile settled back into the water, perfectly still again, eyes fixed on us with what I could only describe as satisfaction. It knew it had terrified us. Worse, it seemed to enjoy it. We need to transfer it to a more secure container, Valorna declared, her security training kicking in. Immediately. Where is your backup containment? The humans exchanged glances. Jackson cleared his throat. About that, you brought a planet-killing monster to a space station without backup containment? The Drakthar warrior's voice was climbing toward actual panic now, which was somehow more terrifying than the crocodile itself. In our defense, Jackson said, we really didn't think he'd get this aggressive. He's usually much calmer. The space travel might have stressed him out. The crocodile, as if understanding it was being discussed, slammed into the glass again. The crack doubled in size. Water was definitely starting to seep through now, creating a small puddle on the exhibition floor. Emergency protocols, Valorna commanded into her communicator. We need the heavy containment team, reinforced barriers, And someone get me the station commander now. The Maluvian ambassador's fluffhopper, sensing the tension, had rolled itself into a tight ball in the corner of its enclosure and was making distressed hiccuping sounds. The bioluminescent swimmer was flashing rapid warning colors. Even the singing stones had gone completely silent, which the thoraxians later told me indicated extreme stress. We can sedate it, Chen suggested, pulling out what looked like a projectile weapon. Standard tranquilizer should put him down for a few hours. How long does it take to work? I asked. On Earth mammals? About 30 seconds to 2 minutes depending on size. And on your crocodile? Chen's hesitation told me everything I needed to know. We're not entirely sure. Crocodiles have a really slow metabolism. Could be 5 minutes. Could be 20. Could be, not at all effective. Could be not at all effective. My skin was now cycling through colors that didn't even have names in standard galactic. The station's heavy containment team arrived. 6 security personnel from various species, all armed with containment foam projectors and energy barriers. They took one look at the crocodile, then looked at Valorna with expressions that clearly said they had not signed up for this. Right. The team leader, a bulky Horvathian, said slowly. So, the plan is to what exactly? Move the murder beast from the cracked container to a secure one. While it's conscious and angry, the technical term is agitated, not angry, Jackson corrected. Crocodiles don't really experience emotion the way sentient species do. It's more like instinctual response patterns, territorial behavior, predatory drive. I don't care if it's writing poetry in there, the Horvathian snapped. How do we move it without anyone dying? Another crack appeared in the glass, this time without the crocodile even hitting it, just spreading. Structural failure imminent. Okay, new plan, Jackson said, and I noticed he was finally looking slightly concerned, which made me approximately 1,000 times more terrified. We're going to need to drain the water first. Crocs are less mobile on land, relatively speaking. Relatively speaking, I echoed weakly. Chen fired the tranquilizer through a special port in the container. The dart hit the crocodile in the shoulder, or what I assumed was the shoulder under all that armor. The creature didn't even flinch. It just turned its head slowly, looked directly at Chen with those cold, calculating eyes, and I swear it looked offended. How long now? Valorna demanded. Could be any minute, Chen said hopefully. The crocodile remained completely alert, utterly unaffected, and increasingly interested in the activity outside its failing container. The thoraxian who'd started this whole mess was being treated for shock in the corner. His mandibles were clicking so fast, they were almost humming. I felt a certain kinship with him at that moment. Someone, the Ythrin ambassador said, their misty form practically vibrating with stress. Please explain to me how your species survived long enough to develop space travel. Jackson actually laughed. People ask us that a lot. The glass developed a third crack. Water was now flowing steadily through multiple fractures, and the crocodile, entirely undrugged, completely unconcerned, and clearly plotting something with whatever passed for thoughts in its prehistoric brain, began swimming in slow, methodical circles. It was testing the container, looking for weaknesses, planning its escape. We were, in technical terms, completely doomed. The tranquilizer finally kicked in about 12 minutes later, which felt like approximately 17 years. The crocodile's movements became sluggish, its eyes drooping, and eventually it settled onto the bottom of the container like a scaly, murderous submarine powering down for maintenance. See? Jackson said brightly. Totally under control. The containment team, working with extreme caution and approximately 15 different safety protocols, managed to transfer the sedated crocodile to a military-grade holding unit that the station commander had authorized. Looking absolutely furious about the entire situation, the new container was rated to hold Class 7 hazardous materials. The crocodile was, apparently, Class 8. Once the immediate crisis had passed and my skin had finally settled back to something resembling a normal color, we all gathered in the station's conference room for what Valorna diplomatically called a debriefing, and what I would call an intervention about humans and their terrible life choices. All right, Valorna began, her tentacles still slightly coiled with residual stress. I think we all deserve an explanation. What in the name of the 17 spiral galaxies makes you think that creature is acceptable to bring to a peaceful exhibition? Jackson leaned back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone who had just almost gotten everyone killed and somehow didn't see the problem. It's a crocodile. They're everywhere on Earth. Common wildlife. Kids learn about them in school. There are nature documentaries. Some places even have crocodile farms for tourism. Tourism, the Drakthar warrior repeated, his voice flat. Your people pay to see these things. Well, yeah, they're fascinating. Survivors from the age of dinosaurs, barely evolved in millions of years because they're already basically perfect killing machines. You have to respect that kind of evolutionary efficiency. The Maluvian ambassador's fur was still standing on end. Dinosaurs? What are dinosaurs? Oh, massive reptiles that dominated Earth for about 165 million years. Most of them died out in a mass extinction event around 66 million years ago. Asteroid impact. Really catastrophic. Killed about 75% of all species on the planet. A horrified silence fell over the conference room. Your planet, I said slowly, my skin flickering between colors as I tried to process this information, was hit by an extinction-level asteroid. Oh sure. Several times throughout geological history, Jackson said cheerfully. The dinosaur one was just the most recent major impact. We get smaller asteroids fairly regularly, meteors burning up in the atmosphere every day. It's actually quite beautiful if you watch the night sky. And the crocodile survived this? Valorna asked. The asteroid that killed 75% of all life. Crocodilians are survivors. They can go months without food. They can survive in both freshwater and saltwater. They can regulate their metabolism based on environmental conditions. When times are tough, they just hunker down and wait it out. It's actually one of the reasons they're such successful predators. Chen, who had been quiet since the tranquilizer incident, decided to add her perspective. Earth's a pretty intense place, biologically speaking. We've got everything from microscopic bacteria that can survive in volcanic vents to massive whales in our oceans. The crocodile's dangerous. Sure, but it's far from the scariest thing on our planet. Far from? I couldn't help the outburst. What could possibly be scarier than 4 meters of armored predator with a bite force that can crush metal? Box jellyfish, Jackson said immediately. Tiny little thing. Practically transparent venom can kill you in minutes. Or blue-ringed octopus, same deal. Cute as anything, deadly as they come. Then there's the hippopotamus. Kills more people in Africa than crocodiles do. Territorial herbivores turns out are surprisingly aggressive. Oh, and mosquitoes. Definitely mosquitoes. Those little insects kill about 700,000 humans per year through disease transmission. My documentation pad, which I'd finally retrieved, nearly slipped from my hands again. Insects kill 700,000 of you per year. Malaria, dengue fever, yellow fever, Zika virus, Chen listed casually. Mosquitoes are vectors for all kinds of diseases. Really annoying too. The buzzing sound they make is incredibly irritating. The Thoraxian delegation was clicking their mandibles in what I now recognized as absolute disbelief. The Ythrin ambassador had dispersed into mist and was having trouble reforming. Let me see if I understand correctly. Valorna said, her voice carefully controlled. Your planet has survived multiple extinction events. It's populated by creatures that can go months without food while being able to crush metal with their jaws. You have tiny, nearly invisible organisms that can kill with a touch. Your herbivores are somehow more dangerous than your carnivores. And tiny flying insects kill more of your species annually than most wars kill across the entire galaxy. That's a pretty good summary, Jackson agreed. You didn't even mention the plants. The plants? Oh yeah, plenty of poisonous plants. Some that can cause chemical burns just by touching them. Giant hogweed, poison ivy, manchineel trees. Australia's got a plant called the Jimpy Jimpy that causes pain so severe people have considered self-termination just to make it stop. Nature's creative on Earth. Why? The Drakthar warrior asked, and I heard genuine confusion in his voice. Would you ever leave your protected settlements? Why would you go into nature at all? Jackson looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Because it's beautiful? Because it's our home? Humans are adaptable. We learn, we prepare, we take calculated risks. Yeah, Earth's dangerous, but it's also incredible. The biodiversity, the ecosystems, the sheer tenacity of life. Everything on our planet is trying to survive and they've all gotten really good at it. By being terrifying, I muttered. By being effective. Jackson corrected gently. The competition judges who had been silent throughout this entire exchange finally spoke up. The head judge, an elderly Corvian with wisdom wrinkles and 4 eyes that had seen far too much today, cleared her throat. After considerable deliberation and consultation with station medical staff, legal advisors and quite frankly trauma counselors, we have reached a decision regarding the Galactic Creature Showcase. We all waited. The human entry is disqualified on grounds of being absolutely inappropriate for a cultural exchange focused on peaceful biodiversity. Jackson nodded. looking unsurprised. However, the judge continued, "We are also awarding Earth a special commendation for evolutionary resilience and survival adaptability, because clearly any species that can thrive on that nightmare planet deserves some form of recognition." "We'll take it," Jackson said with a grin. The regulations came down 3 days later. Official Galactic Assembly Resolution 707043B, which everyone now informally calls the Human Safety Protocol, or less charitably, the Please Stop Bringing Monsters to Space Stations Act. The new rules were extensive. Any species submitting creatures for exhibition must now provide comprehensive threat assessments, verified by at least 3 independent xenobiological experts. Predators above a certain size are banned entirely. Venomous creatures require special permits, and in a clause that was clearly written with Earth specifically in mind, any creature from a Class 4 or higher hazard world must undergo a minimum 6-month evaluation period before being approved for public display. Earth, naturally, was immediately classified as a Class 9 hazard world, the only Class 9 in the known galaxy. The classification board wanted to create a Class 10 specifically for Earth, but that would have required updating 60,000 years of xenobiological standards, so they settled for adding an asterisk next to the Class 9 rating that essentially reads, "No, seriously, everything on this planet is dangerous." Valorna told me later, over drinks that I very much needed, that the station commander had received formal complaints from 47 different species representatives, not about the human specifically, but about the psychological distress caused by proximity to the crocodile. The Miluvian ambassador's fluffhopper still won't come out of its ball. The singing stones haven't hummed a single note since the incident. There's talk of compensation claims, but here's the thing that keeps me awake during my rest cycles. The humans didn't bring the crocodile to be malicious. They genuinely, honestly, truly thought it was a reasonable choice. Jackson showed me pictures on his datapad before they left. Humans swimming in rivers where crocodiles live, children learning about them in educational facilities, entire tourism industries built around observing them safely. Safely being a very relative term in human vocabulary. I did more research after they left. I couldn't help myself. The morbid curiosity that comes from meeting a species that somehow weaponized their entire ecosystem and then just decided to live there anyway. Earth has 5 major extinction events in its geological record. The planet's been a snowball of ice, a volcanic hellscape, an ocean of methane. It's been bombarded by asteroids, suffered supervolcano eruptions, experienced magnetic pole reversals, and through all of it, life not only survived but got more complex, more diverse, more aggressively effective at survival. Humans are the product of that environment. They're not unusually strong by galactic standards, not particularly fast, don't have natural armor or venom or claws. What they have is adaptability, pattern recognition, tool use, the ability to look at a 4-meter crocodile with a bite force that can crush bone and think, yeah, we can deal with that. The Drakthar warrior, whose name I learned was Korvan, contacted me a week after the exhibition. He wanted to know if the stories were true, if humans really did things like jump out of aircraft for recreation, or climb sheer rock faces without safety equipment, or swim with creatures even more dangerous than the crocodile. I confirmed they did all of that and more. There was a long pause on the communication channel. Then Korvan said something I'll never forget. My species built our reputation as warriors over 10,000 years of conquest and combat trials. We thought we understood what it meant to be fierce. Then we meet a species that evolved on a planet actively trying to kill them every single day. And they respond by having picnics outdoors and calling it relaxation. I don't know whether to be terrified or impressed. Both, I told him. Definitely both. The crocodile, now designated as Specimen 7743 Alpha in official records, was eventually transported back to Earth in a cargo vessel with more security than most military operations. Jackson sent me a message when it arrived safely, included a picture of the crocodile being released back into a river in northern Australia, a region he described as beautiful but definitely bring your safety gear. The picture showed the crocodile swimming away into murky water, disappearing beneath the surface, just another predator returning home to a planet full of them. Normal Tuesday for Earth. At the bottom of the message, Jackson had added a note. Thanks for being good sports about everything. If you ever want to visit Earth, let me know. We'll take you somewhere safe. Probably. There was that word again. Probably. My skin flashed through 15 different colors as I archived the message. Somewhere on that Class 9 hazard world, in rivers and swamps and coastal areas, 200,000 crocodiles were doing exactly what they'd done for millions of years, waiting, hunting, surviving, and humans just lived there, built cities next to them, went swimming, called it home. I updated my documentation file with a final note. Humanity, a species that considers evolutionary apex predators to be common wildlife and extinction-level events to be inconvenient, approach with caution, respect, and the understanding that their definition of safe requires significant recalibration. Then I added one more line because it felt important. Also, never under any circumstances ask what they consider dangerous, because if the crocodile was common, normal, acceptable for educational display, I genuinely didn't want to know what humans kept locked away in the scary category. Some questions I'd learned were better left unasked, especially when the answers came from a species that survived their own planet and somehow decided that was character building rather than traumatic. The exhibition hall was being repaired. The regulations were being updated. Insurance premiums for any event involving humans had tripled, and somewhere in the galaxy, the next human delegation was probably packing for their next